What's going on, everybody? This is Real Life with Duke White. I'm your host, Duke White, and I got the man himself, Simon Tarr, Dean of Regent University and Theater. Like, what is that? What is that? The department, the
Well,
film and theater,
I get to be the dean of the School of Communication and the
School of
Arts.
Communication Arts.
I also get to be the dean of the Honors College.
Right.
So I get to lead a lot of very intense undergraduates in the Honors College, and then undergraduate and graduates in film, theater, music and worship, and journalism and communication.
Yeah, yeah. So this is what's interesting is that I just had an opportunity to do an interview with Troy Miller, who is the CEO of
Yes.
NRB, which is the National Religious Broadcasting Convention, and they do amazing work. And he revealed that Christian media is like at an all-time high right now, and I want to ask you about that because I do know a lot of like, especially in the conservative community, we tend to want our kids to be doctors and lawyers, and we want our kids to, and then when we find out that they are creative, that they are indeed musicians, we get scared, and a lot of, like, it's like, you're not gonna make it, you know what I mean? But Regent University genuinely has a place to help them develop skills to where they come out and they're not just the starving artist. I think that's what every parent is afraid of, their kid becoming the starving artist. Could you talk to that
Sure.
a little bit?
Well, I mean that's a fair concern for any parent. My own son is going into design and media, despite my
You're
warning,
like, be a doctor.
and he's very good at it, and he loves it. One of the Every parent is right and should be concerned about their kids' success, their ability to pay the rent, and be successful financially. What's interesting in developing culture is a lot of times there is a thought that politics flows downstream from culture, but it's not really that simple.
Mhm.
Culture flows from politics. It's a cycle, it's a loop, and it's important to create culture, not just respond to it or be angry about it or hope that it doesn't affect you in negative ways. It's important if you feel called to it and drawn to making making the things that create great culture and edifying culture and true culture, beautiful, actual truth and beauty and goodness. Um, Someone has to make that stuff.
And I just feel like from the evidence that at first I thought I saw it when I was a kid, but now on this side of time, I'm like, no, I was just right. Like, when the body of Christ is not leading the way in cultural development, the wicked are. And like, and they do it, and they really gain influence. When I think about, parents who sacrifice so much for their children, and their children relate more to demonic music and and I'm just like, how did that actually happen? And when when we don't care, I think there was a period of time where we thought, oh, these kids will do their thing because they're young, and then they'll come back to the church, not
Mhm.
realizing the amount of content and influence that they're actually listening to that's changing them.
Mm.
Do you think that maybe there's a possibility for a long time that the body of Christ, that we neglected how dangerous secular television, music, and all that stuff really was, that we underestimated it?
Well, I think this is a story as old as the Old Testament. I mean, when we are clear in what we're looking at, keeping our eyes on God, and we understand what obedience is, and we understand, how to listen to His voice and do what we're called to do. Um, our works flow from that. Those are our fruit.
Right.
And when we slip, which we all inevitably do, that's the whole Old Testament and a lot of the New Testament.
Yeah.
Something else fills that void. That's what the world is.
You just made me say, as soon as you, like, the picture you're painting is the story of David. You know
Oh,
what I mean? Like how he ended, and which is out right now. Actually, the House of David is
mhm.
out right now, and I'm very impressed that they're actually showing, like the calamity. They're showing some of the things, and it's just like, hey, we're not so different from those people in those days. I love that they're using the media to tell that story. I would like to ask you this because I think it's so important. Now that I think people like Pat Robertson helped us really get on the front line of media.
Mhm.
And I think that the 700 club and everything like that like really helped people go, oh well, we can do this too. But I everyone talks about this time where certain things were not allowed on television,
Mhm.
right? How do you, and I know your background is in film, how do you tell an authentic story and keep the faith? Because a lot of Christians in media get stuck with the whole, but it's cheesy thing.
Mm.
How do we tell an authentic story and compete with the way the world, you know?
There are This is a challenge, and it's different for every believer. It's different for every kind of believer. For example, we're in our theater at the Center for Performing Arts at Regent. We put on four theatrical shows a year, and I get angry emails pretty much every time. Even though our stated intent and what we do execute on every time is redemptive storytelling, redemptive theater, redemptive works. Um, but you can't please everybody all the time. For example, sometimes one story would be Macbeth,
Right,
like the play. If you leave halfway through Macbeth, um, you would leave thinking that this is all about witchcraft and demonic, because
right,
it's a little rough at the beginning there in Macbeth, and people sometimes get anxious and offended when they're confronted with darkness in the arts. And if you stay through to the end of a story like that, it doesn't go well for those who follow that, right?
right,
The redemption arc there is, I mean, it's not a pretty story, but there's more to it than just there were witches, therefore it's bad. It's like, no, there are witches, and it goes really badly for the people who follow that.
right, right, right.
And so that's it's difficult, because that's you have to treat that carefully, and students and new creators and makers of art want to try to attack challenging things, and you have to be really careful.
You know what's funny about you saying that is that that I guess that's one of the advantages that the secular world has. They don't have to deal with that.
It's true.
They can just tell the story the way they want to tell the story. They can just tell a story. I noticed that there's a movie called The Book of Eli that Denzel Washington did, and it's literally the story about a guy who that's some type of a nuclear apocalypse happened, and he's getting the Bible to a publisher to be republished across because it's the only Bible left. You know what I mean? But he's getting a Bible, and even though there's war and there's violence and this and that, so it's just like, well, it's a movie about a guy protecting the Bible. Would this be considered a Christian movie? And Passion of Christ was rated R.
Hmm.
So how do we? I guess you did answer. You said we have to be careful. Why do you think Passion of Christ got a pass?
Well, I don't think it did get a pass. I think that Mel Gibson took a lot of beatings for making that movie.
Mhm.
And he took a lot of risks, and he had to take it independent, basically use the fact that he was a superstar to do it on his own terms, distribute it himself, and even then, even when it was out, uh, he received a lot of criticism. I mean, so
Right.
part of it is you have to be okay with receiving a lot of criticism, even from people who are ostensibly on your side, or co-believers
Mhm.
in the truth. It's um, there are different ways of thinking about this. One way is you could just make Bible stories. And
Right.
that is a valid way to go about storytelling. It's a great way. I mean, it's a pretty good story.
Right. Right. Right.
I mean,
I like it.
you could
Yeah.
do that. Um, and other ways of thinking about this are that um, there is this moment. There's an author who is an alumnus of Regent. He's quite brilliant in theater, named Bruce Long, and he wrote this book called The Problem of the Dot.
Mhm.
And in his book, he describes very aptly that part of the problem with so-called Christian art is that sometimes it gets obsessed with and insists on only showing the altar call, right? The moment, that instant of salvation being depicted very clearly, and everything leads up to that. It happens, and everything is great from that. And that, as a narrative, as a story to tell, is turns into it can turn into sort of a just so story. It's a very it can be a little um it's one thing where you're going through it personally, but to watch that over and over again, who is that movie for?
Right, right,
Right?
right.
As opposed to what's when you consider that moment as the dot in one's life, that hinge of the universe that you're going through. Everything that leads toward that is important, up to justification.
Right.
And also everything after that, the sanctification through to glorification, is also really, really important. All of those stories are imperfect stories of imperfect people failing constantly.
Yeah, and I think sometimes what's offensive, where a lot of Christians might see offensive, is when they're seeing how lost actually looks or how
Hmm.
brokenness actually looks.
It's scary.
So yeah, right, and so it's just like, no, we don't want to see that because we've come out of
Hmm.
that. But like you said, who are you telling the story for? That's a big thing, and it is just like because when I think about the only group of people that I've seen that have the same struggle with Christian media is actually in the black media entertainment, where they go,
Hmm.
oh yeah, I don't relate. It's like, well, there's a lot of nuances, camera shots, and things like that. And I would actually test some of my friends. I'd show some of the like classic black movies to some of my friends who are white and in film, and they would go, oh man, this is really bad. Like this is, and it's like,
Hmm.
well, why? And they would tell me because it's so focused on showing how hard it is on the streets
Hmm.
that they're not showing what's going on in the people's mind. They're not showing what's going,
Right.
like, oh, like I don't feel, they're like, I don't feel connected.
Hmm.
It was everything other than it's just because it's black. It's like, no, there's serious some social nuances missing in the film
Hmm.
development because of what they're focusing on. And I thought it's
That's
legit.
interesting. That's very similar. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very, and I think that there's a when you, of course, like even in the movies, the bad guys, they don't have any standards, so they can do anything.
Right.
And so so there's that same dilemma that I see that a lot of filmmakers make, Christian filmmakers, because they are thinking about, well, we don't want to show body parts and things like that in the movies because they're doing it for different reasons. And I have a high respect for that, where you can go, we could make millions more if we just added the filth. And then you go, oh, thanks God, appreciate it. Now like I'm missing out on money. But I think
Right.
holding the standard does mean something. Now, you guys not only help on the film side, right? You also help people understand the business side of film.
Yes, we have an entire degree on that, on specifically how how do you think about managing production, that side of the filmmaking, film producing and management.
And the reason why I'm asking is because, it, again, this is where I struggle. Okay,
Mhm.
I could not be I know I'm not a producer. I know I'm not a director because I could never tell someone who's doing an audition in front of me, no.
Uh-huh.
Like I'm like, you got the part, because just because of my heart's way, I'm
Right.
not the whole. I'm afraid of being the Simon Cowell guy from
Oh,
American Idol.
right.
Like I don't do a good job rejecting people, especially when they're being creative and artists.
Hmm.
So the business side, I'm fascinated with, and I'm saying this because I want to encourage people. Like you guys have so many options. You might find out you love the art, but you're not an artist.
Hmm.
You might be a manager.
Right. Film, animation, design, theater, all of these fields are fascinating because there are moments where you are sort of wandering in the desert, and you're having a vision, and that those are great. Maybe like being a solo painter.
Mhm.
That does happen sometimes, but the vast majority of the time when you're in these fields, in the media arts and the communication arts, you are stewarding this entire group of people, an army of people, and trying to get them all to achieve this singular thing. So there are we need people who are good at accounting, and we need people who are good at organizational leadership, just as much as we need people who are great with light and great with audio.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
it's so much bigger than just acting. And like
Yes.
most
Yes.
people, that's what they think is just acting, director, producer. You know what I mean? And
Right.
or the screenwriter. But it's like it keeps going further back. It's like and then there's your stage hands, and then there's
Right.
this and there's like this like and you're like whoa. Like when I brought Nick Shikori from The Chosen, he
Mm-hmm.
plays Zebedee. When I brought Nick Shikori, he said that most people thought he was hanging out with the crew, like the cast, but he was actually hanging out with the people in the set design
Mm-hmm.
because and I'm just like, whoa, that's wild that there's a whole community behind one film, that it's not just the
It's
actors.
massive, especially something as big as The Chosen. It's grown to be this enormous thing. It's really remarkable.
Now, yeah, because I know a lot of parents are trying to figure out if they're going to actually trust their kid and then send their kids to school for film. How concerned is Regent University right now with AI, or is it just like, hey guys,
Oh,
it's here, we're going to embrace it? What's the decision?
well, we talk about it a lot. Um, every single department on campus, no matter whether it's business or politics or cyber or art, is working through how are we going to use this. It's there. What are the ethical and edifying ways to use it? What's appropriate? Um, I mean, the most obvious problem is cheating
Mhm.
and stealing, both of which are wrong,
Yeah, yeah,
and also both of which are pretty tempting, apparently,
right.
given what I've seen. But in animation and in design and all these fields in the arts, we talk through it because um, it's going to be something that to be employed out in the world, you're going to have to know how to steward it and shepherd it,
Mm.
and not just pretend that it doesn't exist and be angry about it. It's There's a lot of distasteful stuff going on with it. There's a lot of theft. There's a lot of people whose work is being co-opted and fed into algorithms, and that's a problem. And the question is, we'll also need where are the policymakers also. It's not just the
Right.
artists, it's also the government people and the lawyers and the policy people who understand this to sort of um, help this develop.
I noticed that whenever there's a new innovation, there's a wild west
Hmm.
part of it, and then we kind of wait a minute to see how people are going to respond to it. If they're going to create like a self justice type vibe, and then when we see that it
And
gets to that toxic level, then we go, okay, let's put some brakes on this. Like, because I know a big thing that they were concerned about in the past was like subliminal messaging and things like
mhm,
that. And I got a whole story on that, but it's but we do know that media has always affected culture in a really big way.
right.
I mean, there's literal songs that started revolutions. You know what I mean? And like especially, uh, it's so interesting because Vietnam, it was so covered, through journalism and media, and it was such. And but even the passion of the people with the hippies and the civil rights, all that stuff was like being able to capture how much was going on in the early 60s and 70s. A lot of it played out on screen.
Well, that's true, but the interesting thing there is that there was a lot being captured and shown, but even that, without AI or without anything digital, it was still being shaped by
I got you.
it was still being shaped by
The
by
policymakers.
the world, and
Yeah, yeah.
so it was not always a fair shake of the story, given
So,
the
do you
story.
think that so if we use AI properly, we
It's the, so I use AI a lot. I like it when I can use it for as an intern, right? I know
gotcha.
when it's really, I don't trust it. Much like, no offense to interns, but you have to check. Yeah, you have to, you send it out to do a bunch of
He only
research.
kind of meant that, guys. But I get it. I get it.
Right, when you bring back a list
Listen,
of resources, I would like to please tell me, bring back a bunch of academic resources about X, Y, and Z, and you have to check
yeah,
because
you do have to check.
it'll make stuff up, and so it's interesting for things like that. It's interesting for processing large amounts of data and saying, look, I'm going to feed all of these articles into you. Please, run through it and pull out make a table of all of the all of the countries that made this much money in this order and sort of. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
You could do it. It would just take months.
Right, right, right. You got to travel the world, and but one of the things that I think about, especially with you guys, now that you're going to have this amazing football stadium that you guys are getting into and everything.
Not football yet.
Not right now. Football, yeah. I guess what is it? Baseball? What is it going to be?
Oh, yeah, baseball, soccer,
Gotcha.
volleyball.
So, and here's the thing is that I'm like, wow, there's little sports movies that could be made. And the reason why I think about not having to actually use people that can injure themselves, hurt themselves. But I'm like, to really create, I don't know. I see the pros and cons on like stunt doubles, all that stuff.
Well, stunt performers are really interesting. We don't get into stunt performance, although we do combat acting training and certification in theater, because again, you have to show things properly and don't get hurt and don't be irresponsible with weapons. And sports similarly, sport journalism and sport media is a really important field, and it'll be interesting to see how we can move into that.
Yeah,
new facilities.
No, when the church, I remember when everything was the devil. Okay, when the church was like, it's the devil. Matter of fact, Saturday Night Live used to joke us, what I mean? They're like, it's the devil,
Satan.
What is it, Satan? Is that Satan? Yeah, you know what I mean? And I have this saying that I go, one of the biggest mistakes that we as Christians can make is thinking that God was the creator of the universe, past tense, and that he's not currently creative. It's a huge, because it's like, oh, God's best work is behind him. Like, no, he's still writing. He still can create. When it came to the Christian rock and Christian rap world and that whole MTV world, and we're just now really accepting it. We're just I'll say since the early 2000s, we've been kind of accepting. What do you think it was that took so long for the church to say this can actually be used?
Well, that Christian. So there's Christian music, and then there's music for worship specifically in contemporary style. That is a really good question. What I wonder is, there was clearly resistance in the past, thinking that these forms were of darkness,
right?
And that rap is of darkness, that rock and roll is not properly edifying just because it exists. And honestly, you still have that. There are still, that's still out there. It's not as pronounced, but what's always interesting to me first is that there are it is a narrow path, right? And that is clear in Scripture. It is a narrow path with respect to, there is exactly one way that you can find your way through to the kingdom, or be found to be led through to the kingdom, and that's through Jesus. What's interesting is how many different forms that can still take,
right?
that it is,
that's very true.
You can be, and honestly, genuinely believe. I don't believe this, but I think it's a legitimate belief to say you cannot have musical instruments in your gathering. And I don't see it personally, and I've studied, I looked through it, and I'm not there, but that's completely legitimate, and those people are out there, and it's fascinating to me that is just as legitimate as classic liturgical forms and old hymns as current contemporary worship music is. And so that's I don't think that's ever going to change, and I don't think that necessarily means that there's disunity.
Right.
Although some would say that. I disagree with that. I think that there is still unity within that. But I wonder how much, and I don't know this, so I'm just guessing. I wonder how much of this is a response to the welcoming of those musical forms is a response to more seeker sensitive.
Right. You know what I think that what I've seen is that each generation inherits the impact of where something needed to be
Hmm.
developed, and then they go, okay,
Right.
we're going to respond to this, and then there's this natural where there's this natural resistance because we're going like, no, the generation before is going to know, we know what holiness is, and it's not that, and like, but the people who are experiencing it go, no, we know how to do this, you know what I mean? And so it's like you've got to trust each
Right.
generation, because when I look at it, I'm like, wow, man, this is the same kind of concept like when new weapons are being presented ex-military. So it's like
Mm-hmm.
we have to be able to say, hey, well, guess what, guys? It's not going to be so much hand-to-hand combat. We're using drones now. We're using,
Right. Right.
and it's like, whoa. So when I think about what I see is God really showing us that He will use the arts to reach certain people. He will use the arts to bring people together. It's because it's bigger than just the arts. For Him, it's just creativity, and I think that we're never more like Him, like when we're creating,
I agree. I agree with that.
and I think that when you start telling God what He can and can't do, I'm like, if if He's asking us as adults and intellectual people to believe that He used a donkey, pretty sure He could use a rapper.
Right. He's not saying that rappers are donkeys. That's
Right?
right.
That's what I'm not. I'm just saying. It's like how far will God
Right.
go?
No, that's a very good
Yeah,
point.
it's like, yeah, but good way because you can, perception is everything. Perception is everything. But the other thing is like, what message would you want parents to know about you know trusting their kids, vision, and giving them the chance to at least come to Regent and see
Mm.
the opportunities that you guys have.
Well, now is a really interesting and exciting time to be going into higher education as a believer, as a student, and as faculty. Honestly, it's a really interesting time to be doing that because it is there are more options than ever, and it's more accepted than ever that this is a legitimate and intellectual form of higher education. It just is. I come from state and secular higher education, and I'm doing so much more than I thought you could do in Christian higher education. It's fascinating. So I would say that, to parents, uh, first, be a good parent, right? If you're if you're training your kids well and trusting in them and teaching them well and shepherding them properly, there comes a point where you can trust them and help them decide. Regent's a really good choice. There are a lot of really good choices, honestly. I think ours happens to be a fantastic one. And so at Regent specifically, um, we do what's called Christian integration, which is to say that um, we don't necessarily have individual classes in what it means to be a Christian in media, because we infuse it in every single course and every single
Yeah,
degree. It is part of every single thing that we do to consider what are the ramifications of audio production, the use of these things in what are the what are the scriptural ramifications? How does God inform how all of this stuff happens? We really do think about this
yeah,
at every
yeah.
level, and I think that
That's exciting.
uh, I would recommend visit campuses. Just visit region, visit lots of places, and get a sense of where God's leading you, and listen hard
Yeah,
and
because
pray for that.
again, I just want to say, because I know we're running out of time. I just want to say, like, I know how scary it is you find out your child is a creative. It's almost just like you're an alien. Like, no, not an actor. Don't freak out. Like, trust God, because He knows what He's doing with them, and He knows how to bring the best out of the kids. And Regent University really is a place where creative men and women of God, young men. If you're thinking about going back to school, go back to school. But just don't be your own dream killer. And parents, do not kill your dreams, your kids' dreams, because like God really has prepared a place for them where they can be enhanced.
And these are big businesses too, and there's never been a better time to be a believer in making media for God's glory than right now. I mean,
Yeah,
the best time was when you were born, and you just started from the beginning. The second best time is right now.
Right now. I like that. All right, we're out of time, guys. We love you very much. Make sure you check out Regent University. Is there a way that they can go to the school theater and the
Sure.
website? Yeah.
It's regent.edu/SCA. That's School of Communication and the Arts. Or if you can just search film or animation or whatever you're interested in the search bar, and it'll bring you to the right page for sure.
All right. Well, we're out of time. This is Real Life with Duke White. See you next week. Love you guys.